My hands, gnarled and trembling slightly from the long years of loving labor, kneaded the dough with a familiar rhythm. The scent of cinnamon and warm apples filled my home, a comforting blanket against the encroaching November chill. It was Thanksgiving, my favorite holiday, a day for family, for gratitude, for the simple joy of being together. For weeks, I had been preparing for this moment. I meticulously planned the menu, wrote out shopping lists, and spent countless hours in my kitchen, a space that felt like a sanctuary, a living testament to every holiday meal I had ever cooked for my children and later, my grandchildren. I was baking the apple pie, a family recipe passed down from my own mother, a recipe my son, Mark, always adored. He had a way of looking at it, his eyes lighting up with the same boyish excitement he had as a child. That look, that brief flicker of genuine happiness, was my greatest reward. For me, Thanksgiving was not about the food itself, but about the love infused into every dish, the invisible threads that connected our family, generation to generation. I was 67 years old, and my life, though quiet, was filled with a contented serenity. My husband, Robert, had passed away 10 years prior, and the initial, devastating grief had slowly been replaced by a quiet acceptance and the knowledge that his love still surrounded me in this house. The house was a living memory book, each room holding a story. The worn-out armchair where he would read the newspaper, the mark on the kitchen floor where he dropped a vase on our 20th anniversary, the garden he so lovingly tended. This house was my home, my past, and my future. It was my anchor in the world, a place where I felt safe and valued. I had spent my life building a nest for my family, a place for them to always return to, no matter where their lives took them. I had given them my time, my savings, my unwavering support, all in the name of love. The doorbell chimed, a cheerful sound that made my heart leap. "They are here," I whispered to myself, a wide smile spreading across my face. I hastily wiped my hands on my apron and went to the front door. I pulled it open, my arms outstretched, ready for the warm embrace. Instead of a hug, I was met with a wall of cold, detached silence. Mark and his wife, Lisa, stood on the porch. Lisa was holding their children, my grandchildren, Ben and Sarah, by their hands. There was no warmth in their eyes. Ben and Sarah, usually so eager to run to me, stood stiffly, their faces expressionless. Mark's eyes, once so full of a son's love, were now an unsettling shade of gray, cold and distant. I felt a knot form in my stomach. Something was very wrong. "Mark, Lisa, what is it?" I asked, my voice wavering. "Come in. The house is warm and dinner is almost ready. I have made your favorite pie, Mark." Mark did not move. He did not smile. He simply stared at me, his face a blank mask. His gaze was devoid of any emotion, as if he were looking at a stranger. "Mother, we have something to discuss with you," he said, his voice flat and devoid of any familial affection. "We will not be staying for dinner." The words hit me like a physical blow. The festive spirit of the day, the years of tradition, all of it crumbled in that single sentence. I stood there, stunned, unable to comprehend his words. "What?" "But Thanksgiving. I have been cooking all day," I stammered, my heart sinking in my chest. Lisa stepped forward, her perfectly manicured hand on Mark's arm. Her expression was one of barely concealed impatience, as if she were enduring a tedious chore. "We have other plans, Eleanor. We have told you before that we are moving on. You are not a part of our new life." "Not a part of your new life?" I repeated, the words feeling foreign and absurd on my tongue. "But I am your mother. I am your children's grandmother. We are family." I thought this was what family was about. Being together. Mark took a deep breath, and his gaze hardened. "That is precisely what we are here to talk about. This antiquated idea of family, it is not working for us. Not anymore. We are a modern family. Our life is fast-paced, dynamic. We do not have the time or the energy for this." He gestured to the house, to the warmth radiating from the kitchen, to the very essence of my existence, with a dismissive wave of his hand. The gesture was like a slap. He was not just rejecting the dinner, he was rejecting my entire way of life, my entire being. I do not understand, I said, my voice barely a whisper. Please, Mark, come inside. Let us talk about this over dinner. You can tell me what is troubling you. Mark's face twisted in an expression that was not anger, but a cold, calculating resolve. There is nothing to talk about. We have already made our decision. You are a burden, Mother. A financial burden, an emotional burden, a logistical burden. We have decided to sever all ties with you. You will no longer be a part of our lives. I felt as if the world was tilting on its axis. The familiar comfort of my home, the warmth of the sun on my face, the scent of the pie, it all seemed to evaporate into thin air. I looked from Mark to Lisa, to the two innocent faces of my grandchildren. Ben stared at the ground, and Sarah was chewing on her lip, but neither of them met my gaze. They did not try to run to me. They did not say a word. They were just blank. It was a coldness that was so profound, so absolute, it was more painful than any shouted insult. A burden. The word echoed in my mind, a cruel, mocking sound. How can I be a burden, Mark? I have given you everything. I have always been here for you. I have always supported you. I gave you your entire down payment for this house. I paid for your college tuition. How can I be a burden? Lisa's lips curled into a thin, tight smile. That is all in the past, Eleanor. We have our own lives now. And frankly, your outdated ideas and your constant need for attention, it is exhausting. We have a family of our own to focus on now. Mark took a step closer, his eyes narrowing. We have been consulting with our legal team. They have advised us that due to your age and your inability to manage your affairs, we are in the process of gaining legal guardianship over you and your assets. It is for your own good, Mother. You are a liability. We cannot have you making impulsive decisions that could jeopardize our inheritance. The word inheritance hung in the air like a poisonous cloud, suffocating me. This was not about my well-being. This was about money. It was about them taking everything I had. My stomach churned, and I felt a wave of nausea wash over me. The very ground seemed to sway beneath me. My assets? My inheritance? I asked, my voice trembling with a mixture of disbelief and growing rage. You think I am incapable of managing my own life? I have managed this household for over 40 years. I have been running my own finances since your father passed away. I have not asked you for a single thing. How dare you? Mark scoffed. Please, Mother. Do not pretend you are some financial guru. We have seen the numbers. We know you are barely getting by on your pension. We need to secure your assets for the future. For the children. It is our responsibility. I stared at him, unable to form a coherent thought. His words, his cold, calculating gaze, the dismissive wave of his hand, it was all so foreign. This was not my son. This was a stranger, a cruel and heartless man who saw me not as his mother, but as an obstacle. A burden to be removed. Lisa's voice cut through the haze of my shock. We will be sending a team to help you move out. We have found a lovely facility for you. It has nurses on staff and a community for people your age. It is for the best, Eleanor. You will be safe there. And we will not have to worry about you anymore. A lovely facility. A nursing home. They were talking about putting me in a home, taking my house, taking my savings, taking my freedom. All of this on Thanksgiving, the day I had spent weeks preparing for, a day meant for family and gratitude. I looked at the apple pie sitting on the counter, its golden crust a mocking reminder of my misplaced love and effort. My heart, which had been so full just moments before, now felt like a hollow, aching void. I was not just being rejected, I was being erased. They were erasing my existence, my legacy, my entire life. They were wiping me clean, as if I had never mattered. The pain was so sharp, so profound, it stole my breath. I wanted to scream, to rage, to cry, but I could not. I was frozen, trapped in this horrifying moment of utter betrayal. Go, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Mark looked surprised. What? I said, go, I repeated, anew, steely resolve taking root deep within my bones. Get out of my house. Now. He seemed to hesitate for a moment, perhaps surprised by the sudden defiance in my voice. Then, with a shrug, he turned and led his family away. I watched as they walked to their car, not looking back. The silence they left in their wake was deafening. The only sound was the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hall and the gentle hum of the refrigerator. The Thanksgiving dinner, which had been so full of promise, now lay before me, a monument to a love that had been brutally rejected. I closed the door, the click of the lock echoing in the empty hall. I walked back to the kitchen and stared at the feast I had prepared. The golden turkey, the creamy mashed potatoes, the roasted vegetables, the glistening cranberry sauce, and the perfect apple pie. It was a banquet for no one. I was alone. Truly, completely alone. And in that moment, in the crushing weight of my loneliness, a single, terrifying thought crystallized in my mind. This was not an act of kindness. This was a declaration of war. My heart ached, but it was an ache laced with a cold, hard anger. I had lost everything, but I would not lose my dignity. I would not lose my freedom. The sun had set, and a deep, mournful twilight had fallen over my home. The silence was immense, filled only with the echoes of their cruel words. The pie, once a symbol of love, now felt like a bitter, mocking joke. I went to the window and looked out into the cold night, watching the last slivers of light disappear from the sky. My reflection stared back at me, a woman with a face etched with a pain so deep, it was almost unrecognizable. My son had said I was no longer his mother. And in that moment, I understood that the person I thought he was had never existed. He had erased me, and now I felt an unshakable urge to fight back. The days following Thanksgiving were a blur of grief and disbelief. The house, which had always felt so warm and alive, was now a tomb of silence. The scent of cinnamon and apples had faded, replaced by the faint, stale odor of a home that had been abandoned by life itself. I spent my days in a haze, wandering from room to room, touching the furniture and staring into the empty spaces that my family used to fill. My heart felt like a shriveled, dried-out fruit, empty of all its sweetness. The words he had spoken to me, "You are a burden," echoed in my mind, a relentless, torturous refrain. My son, the little boy I had raised, the man I had sacrificed everything for, saw me as an obstacle. It was a bitter, unbearable pill to swallow. I tried to call him, a dozen times, maybe more. Each time, the call went to voicemail. I left messages, my voice thick with desperation and grief. "Mark, please, let us talk. I do not understand what is happening. Please, just call me back." My words fell into a void, never to be answered. Then, one day, I received a text message from an unknown number. It was short, and it was brutal. "Do not contact us again. You are a liability. The lawyers will be in touch." It was signed Mark. I did not need a signature to know it was him. The words were a final, cold confirmation of my worst fears. He had not just shut me out. He had erased me from his life, as if I were a mistake he was now correcting. 2 days later, an official-looking envelope arrived in the mail. It was from Mark's attorney. The letter was filled with legal jargon, but the message was clear and chilling. They were filing a petition for legal guardianship, citing my age and supposed inability to make sound decisions. They claimed I had impulsive spending habits and that my home was in a state of disrepair. It was a tapestry of lies, all designed to paint a picture of an old, senile woman who could not take care of herself. I held the paper in my trembling hands, the words a direct assault on my dignity, my independence, my very self. My eyes scanned the details, each line a new betrayal. They had even gone so far as to include a report from a supposed home inspection, which I had no memory of. I realized then that their Thanksgiving visit had not been a cold announcement, but a calculated reconnaissance mission. They had come to gather evidence. They had come to mock me, to see the proof of their supposed burdens, to gloat over their perceived victory. The full scale of their treachery began to dawn on me. My closest friend, Susan, was the only person I felt I could talk to. She was a fiery, no-nonsense woman who had been my rock since my husband passed away. When I called her, my voice was shaking and the words came out in broken pieces. I read her excerpts from the lawyer's letter. She listened in silence, and when I was finished, she let out a long, slow breath. "Eleanor," she said, her voice gentle but firm, "this is not about your well-being. This is about their greed. They are trying to take everything from you. You cannot let them do this. You have to fight. Her words resonated in me, sparking a tiny flicker of life in the darkness that had consumed me. I had always been a fighter. I fought for my children, for my husband, for our home. I had always been the one to fix things, to make things right. But this felt different. This was a battle against my own blood. How do you fight the person you have dedicated your entire life to? The very thought of it was a crushing weight. Yet, a deep-seated anger was beginning to take root in my soul. I was not senile. My mind was as sharp as it had ever been. My home was not in disrepair. It was a sanctuary of a lifetime of memories. The lies they were telling, the cruelty they were inflicting, was not just an attack on me, but on everything I held dear. I would not, let them win. Over the next few weeks, the harassment escalated. Mark would show up unannounced, with Lisa and the children in tow. They would not come in. They would just stand on the porch, a silent, menacing presence. I would see them in the driveway, looking at the house, their faces a mixture of impatience and a cold, calculating greed. They were treating me like an artifact, a curiosity to be observed, a problem to be solved. My once beloved home was a prison, and they were the cruel, watchful wardens. One afternoon, Mark and Lisa came to the door. This time, they did not have the children with them. The coldness in their eyes had been replaced with an unsettling arrogance. They had a new set of documents with them, a series of forms that looked official and intimidating. "We have come to an agreement with our lawyers, Mother," Mark said, his tone patronizing. "We are offering you a chance to sign these papers and avoid a long, drawn-out legal battle. We can make this easy on all of us." I did not take the papers. My hands were balled into fists at my sides, a strange new strength coursing through my veins. "I am not signing anything," I stated, my voice steady. "And I do not want to see you here again. This is my home. You are not welcome here." Lisa's eyes widened in surprise, and then narrowed in fury. "Eleanor, do not be difficult. You are holding up the process. We need to do this for your own good. We have a family to think about." "My own good." I laughed, a harsh, humorless sound. "You want to take my house, my life savings, and lock me away in a home, and you call that my own good? I am not a fool, Lisa. I know what you are doing." Mark stepped closer, his voice low and menacing. "Mother, we are trying to be reasonable. You do not have the resources to fight this. Our lawyers have told us that we have an airtight case. Your refusal to cooperate will only make things more difficult for you." His words, a thinly veiled threat, only solidified my resolve. The pain was still there, but it was now a sharp, focused point of anger. They were not just taking my money, they were trying to break my spirit. They were trying to convince me that I was helpless, worthless. But I was not. I was a survivor. I had raised a family, I had built a home, I had navigated the world after losing my husband. I was strong. "I have more resources than you know, Mark," I said, looking him straight in the eyes. It was a bold statement, a lie I hoped would throw them off guard. But the moment I said it, a new idea, a desperate, wild plan, began to form in my mind. Mark scoffed, his arrogance returning. "Please. We have seen your bank statements. You are barely solvent. Do not try to bluff us, Mother. It is beneath you. Sign the papers and we can all move on with our lives." "No," I said simply. "I will not sign them. You want to fight me? Then we will fight. But do not expect me to go down without a fight. I will not give you anything. You have already taken enough from me." Lisa's face was a mask of pure fury. She turned to Mark, her voice a low hiss. "This is what happens when you try to be nice, Mark. She is crazy. She has lost her mind." "I am not crazy," I said, my voice rising. "I am heartbroken. I am angry. I am betrayed. But I am not crazy. I am a woman who loves her family, and you are taking advantage of that love. You are stealing from me. You are lying about me. You are trying to put me in a home. And for that, I will never forgive you." Mark's face was now a hard, cold mask of his own. He looked at me, not with the slightest hint of regret or compassion, but with a cold, detached contempt. "Do not say things you will regret, Mother. You are a bitter, lonely old woman. This is our last offer. You can cooperate, or you can face us in court. We will not be back. With that, he turned, and they both walked away, their figures disappearing down the street. I was left alone again, but this time, the silence was different. It was no longer a sign of despair, but a quiet, contemplative space. I went to the study, a room I had not entered since my husband had passed away. I had locked it up, unable to face the memories within. I opened the door, and the scent of old paper and leather filled the air. I sat at his desk, and in the silence of the room, my mind, which had been in a whirlwind of pain and shock, began to clear. I remembered a conversation I had with Robert years ago, a conversation I had long since forgotten. He had told me, "Eleanor, always have a secret. Something that is just for you. Something that no one can ever take from you. It will be your greatest asset." I had smiled and asked what his secret was. He had just winked and said, "You will find out one day." I looked at the framed photograph of him on the desk, his smile as warm as ever. It was then that a desperate, wild hope took hold of me. A plan, a secret, a quiet, cold revenge. I would not just fight them. I would make them regret the day they called me a burden. I reached for the old, heavy phone book on the desk, my fingers tracing the letters, a new purpose filling my heart. The days that followed Mark and Lisa's final ultimatum were filled with a quiet, determined focus. The grief was still there, a dull ache in my chest, but it was now a familiar companion, no longer the overwhelming force that had paralyzed me. The quiet of my house, once a source of loneliness, had become a sanctuary for my thoughts, a space where my plan could take shape, away from prying eyes and cruel words. The first thing I did was make an appointment with a lawyer. Not just any lawyer, but one that specialized in elder law and estate planning, a lawyer who would not be easily intimidated. I found her in the old, well-worn phone book I had pulled from Robert's study. Her name was Catherine Thompson. Her office was in a quiet, unassuming building downtown, and the moment I walked in, I knew I had made the right choice. She was a woman in her late 40s, with a calm, reassuring presence and eyes that held a keen intelligence. I sat in her office and laid out the entire story, from the Thanksgiving dinner to the threatening legal letters. I did not hold back any details, describing the coldness in Mark's eyes, the patronizing smile on Lisa's face, and the chilling emptiness of the text message. I showed her the letters from Mark's lawyers, the pages filled with lies about my mental state and the disrepair of my home. As I spoke, her expression remained neutral, but I could see a growing look of quiet fury in her eyes. When I finished, she did not immediately speak. She simply leaned back in her chair and stared at me. "Eleanor," she said, her voice low and steady. "What you have described is a clear and egregious case of elder abuse. Your son and his wife are attempting to coerce you into giving up your assets and your autonomy under false pretenses. This is not just a family dispute, it is a crime." Her words, so clear and direct, were a balm to my aching heart. For the first time since Thanksgiving, I did not feel crazy or alone. I felt seen, validated. We spent the next several hours meticulously going over every detail of my life. She asked about my finances, my health, my relationships, my history. I gave her everything. I showed her my bank statements, my health records, and the detailed log of the upkeep of my home. I explained how I had lived a frugal life, saving every penny, never asking my son for a thing, while always giving freely to him. "Eleanor," she said, after reviewing my financial documents, her face a mixture of respect and surprise. "Your son's lawyers claim you are barely solvent. That is not the case at all. You are a very wealthy woman. Your savings and investments are substantial. You have more than enough to live on for the rest of your life, and then some." I had always been good with money, a trait I learned from my own hardworking parents. Frugality was a virtue, not a sign of weakness. Over the next few weeks, Catherine and I worked tirelessly. She advised me to not respond to any of Mark's communication and to not allow him or Lisa into my house. She filed a response to their petition, a document that was just as dense with legal jargon, but filled with the unwavering truth. I did not see it, but I knew what it said. It called their claims baseless and an attempt at financial coercion. It was a direct, unapologetic counterattack. Mark and Lisa, believing they had the upper hand, continued their harassment. The phone calls, once so frequent, had now stopped. Instead, I would see them parked on the street outside my house. Sometimes, Mark would get out of the car, looking at the house as if he were already measuring it for a sale. Other times, I would see Lisa on the sidewalk, talking on her phone, her eyes fixed on my home with a hungry, predatory look. Their confidence, I could feel it, was growing. They believed they were close to their victory, to getting their hands on what they considered was rightfully theirs. They were completely unaware of the quiet storm I was brewing in my sanctuary of a home. One day, Mark sent me a text message. "Mother," it read. "We received the letter from your lawyer. It is a waste of time and money. You cannot win. We have the proof. We will see you in court." His arrogance was astounding. He truly believed he was invincible, that my age was a weakness he could exploit, and that my love for him was a leash he could use to control me. He was in for a rude awakening. Catherine and I met a few more times, finalizing our strategy. We had all the documents, all the proof, all the evidence we needed. We had gone over every lie Mark's lawyers had written, and we had a counterargument for each one. The day before the court hearing, Catherine called me. "Eleanor, are you ready?" she asked. My heart was pounding in my chest, a drumbeat of anticipation and a cold, quiet anger. The grief was gone now, replaced by a steely determination. I was no longer the heartbroken old woman who had stood on her doorstep on Thanksgiving, my arms full of pies and my heart full of love. I was a warrior, a survivor. "I am ready, Catherine," I said, my voice firm and unwavering. "I have been ready for a long, long time." The day of the court hearing arrived. I had barely slept the night before, my mind replaying every conversation, every lie, every cold glance. I chose my outfit carefully, a simple, elegant navy blue dress, a string of pearls, and a pair of sensible shoes. I wanted to look dignified, strong, and in control. This was not a plea for sympathy. It was a declaration of my independence. When I arrived at the courthouse, Catherine was waiting for me. She was dressed in a sharp business suit, a serious but reassuring expression on her face. Together, we walked into the building, a fortress of justice and cold, hard facts. We made our way to the courtroom and I saw them. Mark and Lisa were already there, seated with their lawyers. Mark looked over and saw me. The arrogant smirk that had been plastered on his face for weeks disappeared, replaced by a look of surprise. He had not expected me to show up, looking so calm and so strong. He had expected me to be a broken, sobbing mess. But I was not. I was the woman he had underestimated. I was the woman who was about to show him the true meaning of regret. The courtroom air was thick with tension, a palpable hum of anticipation that had replaced the smug certainty of my son and his wife. Catherine, my lawyer, had just finished her opening statement, a cold and methodical dismantling of the lies Mark and his legal team had spun. I watched as the confidence slowly drained from their faces, replaced by a dawning terror. Mark's lawyer, who had seemed so sure of his victory moments before, now sat slumped in his chair, his face a mask of disbelief. The judge, a man whose face had remained an unreadable canvas, was now leaning forward, his gaze fixed on Catherine. "Your Honor," Catherine began, her voice unwavering, "my client is not here today to argue about her diminished capacity, which, as we have shown, is a fabrication. She is here to defend her right to live her life and manage her assets as she sees fit. And she is here to reveal a truth that has been intentionally concealed from this court." Mark's lawyer stood up, an urgent, panicked look on his face. "Objection. This is irrelevant, Your Honor. The sole purpose of this hearing is to determine if Mrs. Eleanor Hayes is capable of dash." "Overruled," the judge stated, his voice a low command. "I will hear what the counsel has to say. You have painted a picture of a woman who has no control over her life. Let us see if that picture holds up to scrutiny." Mark's lawyer sat down, his face pale with a mixture of anger and defeat. Catherine turned to me, a quiet nod of encouragement. I stood up, my legs feeling a little wobbly at first, but a new, unshakable strength coursed through me. I looked at Mark and Lisa, their eyes wide with a combination of fear and confusion. They were not looking at me with contempt anymore. They were looking at me with a profound, dawning horror. "Your Honor," I began, my voice clear and steady. "I have heard the claims made against me. They say I am a burden, that I am incapable of managing my affairs. They say I have no money, that my home is in disrepair, and that I am a liability. All of these claims are lies." I pulled a document from the folder Catherine handed me. This is a statement from a certified appraiser. My home, which my son claims is a burden, was recently appraised at a value of $1,800,000. Its upkeep is meticulous, as you can see from the photographs we have submitted. I handed the document to the clerk. A gasp, a quiet, sharp inhalation of breath, came from Mark. He had no idea. "They have also claimed that my financial situation is dire," I continued, pulling another document from the folder. "This is a statement from my primary investment account. As you can see, I am a multimillionaire with a portfolio that has been growing steadily for the past 10 years. My son and his wife have never once inquired about my financial well-being. They simply assumed I was poor because I chose to live a simple, frugal life." The silence in the courtroom was deafening. Mark and Lisa stared at the document, their faces ashen. Their entire case was built on the premise that I was destitute, that I was a burden, that they were saving me from myself. Their entire argument was crumbling before their eyes. I took a deep breath. "There is one more thing, Your Honor. The true reason for my son's petition. It is not about my well-being. It is about an inheritance. An inheritance that my husband and I had been building for our son and his family. A large trust fund, to be specific, that was to be released upon my passing." I looked at Mark. His face was a mask of pure, unadulterated greed and panic. He had been so sure of this inheritance. He had spent his entire life waiting for it. My husband and I decided years ago that we would create this trust fund, with the intention of it being a gift to our son and his family. But we also had a caveat. The trust was to be held in my name, with the condition that my son would have access to it only after he had shown a true, consistent pattern of love, respect, and kindness towards me, his mother, in my later years. It was a test of character, Your Honor. A test he failed. I then pulled out the final document, a legal contract that had been meticulously drafted with Catherine's help. Because of my son and his wife's actions, because of their lies, their cruelty, and their attempt to put me in a home and seize my assets, I have decided to dissolve the trust fund. And, with the help of my lawyer, I have created a new will. In it, I have disinherited my son, Mark Hayes, and his wife, Lisa Hayes, completely. The words hung in the air, a final, crushing blow. Mark and Lisa looked as if they had been struck. Mark's face was a study in profound shock and a dawning, bitter regret. He had gambled everything on a lie, and he had lost. Furthermore, I continued, my voice now laced with a cold, righteous fury, I have instead decided to create a new foundation. A foundation for the support of elderly people who have been victims of abuse and neglect by their own families. I have endowed it with the full amount of the trust fund. My husband and I wanted to do some good in the world, and it is a purpose that seems more fitting now than ever. I have also ensured that my home, the home my son tried to steal, will be sold. The proceeds will go towards this foundation. I will be living in a beautiful new condo I have purchased, a life of freedom, dignity, and independence. The life I deserve. Mark stood up, his face red with a mixture of anger and humiliation. Mother, you cannot do this. This is a disgrace. You are ruining everything, he shouted. The judge slammed his gavel. Order. You have had your say, Mr. Hayes. The court has seen all the evidence. Your petition for guardianship is hereby denied. Furthermore, due to the malicious nature of your claims, I will consider imposing sanctions on your legal team. He looked at me, a newfound respect in his eyes. Mrs. Hayes, your dignity and your strength in the face of such a difficult situation are a testament to your character. You are free to go. Your case is dismissed. I stood up, and for the first time in months, I felt truly free. I did not look back at Mark and Lisa. I walked out of that courtroom with my head held high, Catherine at my side. As we left the building, the afternoon sun felt warm and glorious on my face. The pain of the past few months, The years of self-sacrifice and emotional abuse had been a heavy burden to bear, but now it was gone. I had not won a battle. I had won my life back. I moved into my new condo a week later. It was modern and chic, with floor-to-ceiling windows that looked out onto a breathtaking view of the city. I was no longer a ghost in my own home. I was finally alive. I had dinner with my friend Susan that night, and we raised a glass to new beginnings. I never heard from Mark again. I saw his name in the news a few months later. His business had failed, his legal fees had bankrupted him, and his reputation had been ruined. He had lost everything he had gambled for. I felt no joy in their downfall, only a quiet, sad certainty. They had sealed their own fate with their own hands. I had simply held up a mirror to their greed. I lived my life to the fullest, a vibrant, active woman who traveled the world, volunteered at my foundation, and enjoyed her newfound freedom. My son had said I was no longer his mother. But in my final act, I had proved that a mother's love, when disrespected, could be the most powerful and the most final form of justice. The story of my life was not a tragedy. It was a triumph.